Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Morning and welcome to For the Record. Today is Monday, February 9th, 2015. I trust that you had a great weekend, whether you're here in the Cayman Islands or if you're overseas. I know some people overseas up north have been getting a lot of snow up that way. And on the West Coast, lots of rain as well. That's in the United States. Here in the Cayman Islands, the weather's been beautiful, nice and cool, sometimes a little bit overcast, sometimes some light drizzle. I understand that West Bay's been getting their fair share of rain as well. And there's a little joke I'll tell you. One of my Domino friends said, the leader of the opposition says that even when it rains in West Bay and it doesn't rain in the rest other parts of the island, he gets the blame for that also. So whether or not you're listening overseas via the web or you're here in the Cayman Islands, I want to welcome you to For the Record. Of course, For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman specifically for you, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Orit Connor, and you can join me on the record every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m., and that is if a holiday does not fall on that date. And you can also join me over the phone by calling us on our toll-free number, which is 1-800-534-8255, and that is the compliments of Lime. You can also call us on 949-3037 and 949-6990. And of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, you can email us at For the Record. That is one word, For the Record at candw.ky. I also want to remind you that our show would not be possible without our great sponsors. And today, For the Record is brought to you by Seagrape Secretarial Services. Seagrape Secretarial Services, they are located at Unit Number 2, Grand Plaza, Howard Street, Georgetown. Their telephone numbers are 326-9953 or 924-8927. 924-8927. Seagrape Secretarial Services provide quality, professional, and affordable service, and that service is guaranteed because at Seagrape Secretarial Service, there is no job too small for them to undertake. And of course, for those of us, or those of you who like your Morning Joe, to give you that extra kick, that extra perk to wake you up, we have Paradise Coffee, who have been our proud benefactors here at For the Record as well. And you can visit Paradise Coffee at Merco Center for Cayman's only homemade coffee brand. Paradise Coffee is roasting beans from all regions of the world on a daily basis. So you can enjoy blends like Good Morning Cayman, Cayman Gold, and Black Coral. Paradise Coffee, you can reach them on 943-3388, or you can email them and visit their website, www.paradisecoffee, one word, paradisecoffee.ky, or you can check out Paradise Coffee at Merco Center for homemade coffee. They have their brands in all major supermarkets, and all you have to do is look for the blue tag. So those are our benefactors, our sponsors for on For the Record. Like I said, without them, there would be no show. Before I bring some news that's related to the Cayman Islands, huge news that's related to the Cayman Islands, I don't want to keep you in suspense. I don't want you to think that I'm going to be the only person on the show this morning. So I want to welcome Councillor and member of the Legislative Assembly who represents the District of Georgetown, Councillor Roy McTaggart, and he's also the Councillor in the Ministry of Health. Councillor McTaggart, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning to you. Good morning, OC, and good morning too to the wider Cayman Islands and to everyone who calls this beautiful place home.
And I also want to welcome on board again today, and looks like she'll soon be co-hosting the show as well. She's coming on here so often these days, right? Ms. Jennifer Ahern, who is the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health and Culture. Ms. Ahern, good morning.
Good morning, OC. Thanks for having me on again.
Right. And I'm going to just tilt our hands a little bit and tell you that we're going to be talking about the Cancer Registry Bill. That's what we'll be talking about this morning. But before we go there, I want to talk about some occurrences, or one occurrence that took place in the United Kingdom over the weekend. And of course, I was talking to Councillor McTaggart just now, and he pointed out, yes, it is the silly season in the UK now. Of course, they have now gone to fixed elections in the United Kingdom. And as a result of that, their general elections will be held on the 7th of May of this year. So things are being ramped up at the moment. And I will read you an article, most of it, from BBC News, and it's been carried on all of the major news wires and newspapers in the United Kingdom. Ed Miliband issues warning to UK controlled, and he uses the words tax havens. Of course, we refer to ourselves as low tax jurisdictions. We do not consider ourselves a tax haven or any kind of haven for that matter. The only haven that we have is Safe Haven, and I think we have some other places called Winter Haven and some residential areas, but we are not a tax haven. And for those of you who don't know, of course, Ed Miliband is the leader of the Labour Party. Labour Party is in opposition at this point in time, and they're seeking to gain back the reins of government in the United Kingdom, hopefully on May 7th. Based on what we're seeing here, we're hoping that they don't regain the reins of government in the UK. And I'm going to read these excerpts for you. A Labour government would push for UK overseas territories to be put on an international blacklist if they refuse to cooperate with a drive against tax avoidance, Ed Miliband told a group. In a letter to their leaders, he said that they would have 6 months to compile a public register of offshore companies. Now, that letter to the group, he is referring to all of the British overseas territories as well as the Crown dependencies, and they would be Anguilla, Bermuda, British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, the Turks and Caicos Islands, Gibraltar, and Montserrat, and also the Crown dependencies of Jersey, Guernsey, and Isle of Man. He says, if an overseas territory or Crown dependency does not meet this deadline, we will ask the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that is the OECD, to put them on the OECD's tax haven black list. Pretty strong words. So the UK, under a Labour government, would put the Cayman Islands and its other overseas territories out to dry. They haven't said what they would do if there is some damage, and we know that damage will be incurred if to our financial sector if that is done. I won't go into the details of it. I welcome you as our listeners to go and read the articles. You can see some clips on what he has said, but obviously a Labour government would not mean the Cayman Islands any good. We have seen the Chief Minister in Gibraltar, Fabian Picardo. He has already responded to it. I read an article in the Royal Gazette, a Bermuda newspaper, and Michael Dunkley, the Premier of Bermuda, has responded to it as well. And I have no doubt that our Premier here in the Cayman Islands will be responding as well, because this has huge implications for the Cayman Islands and the overseas territories. And I personally wonder out loud whether or not we should be taking some action otherwise than responding to him in letter. But maybe all of the overseas territories and the Crown dependencies need to show their collective resolve on this issue, and maybe take out some ads in all of the newspapers, The Guardian, the Daily Mail, the Times, and take out an ad to show their resolve and shame David Miliband for what he has said and what the Labour government intends to do if they get in. They have gone public with this, so there is no question that if a Labour government comes into play, that they're not going to that they're going to back down on this. Obviously, they're going to take it forward. And to a certain extent, we have to blame the Conservative-led coalition on this as well, because when David Cameron, as president of the, or chairman of the EU, president, I think, of the EU at the time, and he would have done that for 6 months, he also stated that as well. We know of the tensions that occurred during the joint ministerial in the UK in December, where the territories were not in agreement with this, and they almost reached the point where they would have departed the ministerial council without having even a statement being made. So folks in the Cayman Islands, this is serious for us. We know what the financial services industry in the Cayman Islands has said about a register, and we know what the Cayman Islands Premier has said in that regard. Keep an eye out, look out. We expect to hear from our Premier in this regard. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Orit Connor, but I'm not your guest this morning. I have already introduced my guest, even though so far I have done most of the talking, but I thought that this was extremely important for our public to know, because we have not seen anything yet on Cayman News Service. We have not seen anything yet in the Caymanian Compass in regards to it, and it's a huge subject. So I want to remind you that you're listening For the Record. We're going to take a commercial break now, and when we come back, I will hand the microphone over to my guest. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Orit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning, we have MLA for the District of Georgetown and Councillor in the Ministry of Health, Mr. Roy McTaggart. We also have Ms. Jennifer Ahern, who is the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health and Culture. We will be discussing the Cancer Registry Bill, and it is a bill for a law to provide for the mandatory reporting on the incidence of cancers and brain tumors, the establishment of a cancer and brain tumor registry, and for incidental and connected purposes. Folks, I'm going to hand over to you because this is your specialty. I want you to, tell us this is a draft bill at this point in time that has gone to Cabinet for approval, and if you can tell our listening audience what the steps that will take place from here on.
Well, thank you, Osei, and thank you for hosting us this morning. As you mentioned before, we're here to discuss the Cancer Registry Bill, the draft of the legislation, which it has now been approved by Cabinet for consultation, and I think it is tomorrow that we'll be holding a press conference to release the bill to the public, and we'll be opening for a 30-day consultation period for the public to provide feedback to the ministry with regard to the contents of the bill. I would point out that this will be in addition to the standard 21-day consultation period that normally occurs once a bill is sent down to the Legislative Assembly for approval. In just talking about the cancer registry, Cayman has basically had a cancer registry since 2010, and it has been purely voluntary. I think to date we've probably had somewhere in the region of 250 plus registrations under the voluntary program, but the numbers of reports are fairly, I wouldn't say small, but they're slow in coming in. And so really the impetus for this registry came out, making it a public registry came out of the health conference, I think, that we had back in 2012, when it was considered at that point that there was a need to have a public registry. Really one of the big, I think, advantages of it being public is that it would give us really a very fairly accurate picture of the incidence of cancer here in the Cayman Islands, and give us a far more complete picture of what takes place and what's happening in our community. I know you hear anecdotal reports and evidence, or hear things that we have some of the highest incidences of cancer in the region or possibly the world, but we really don't know, simply because we don't have a complete picture of the numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, as Councillor McTaggart mentioned, we have had a cancer registry in the Cayman Islands, which was a joint venture, a joint effort between the Cancer Society, the Health Services Authority, and the Ministry of Health, but it's currently voluntary. So, and as he mentioned, the issue is that in the absence of having complete information and complete data, we really don't know what our greatest needs are in terms of cancer, what the greatest incidence is, and where we should be directing our resources in terms of messages and prevention, or even treatment. Is it a situation that we have one particular type of cancer that is the single most prevalent one that we really should be looking at investing in some specific equipment to treat that cancer and so on. And one of the things that one of the reasons why we wanted to make it mandatory was also so that in the legislation we can put in provisions in terms of the confidentiality. Because some of the concerns that we've heard from people when we've mentioned, when the Cancer Society and the Health Services Authority, the Ministry, has gone out to try and encourage people to use the registry that we have now, has been a concern over confidentiality and not necessarily wanting their information to be in the register and have it accessible to everybody. So, and just to say that currently it isn't the situation where it is accessible to everybody. The confidentiality is there currently. If you submit your information regarding your cancer, it will be treated as confidential information. It's not going to be a registry that everybody can access and search through and check and see who's had cancer. That's not what it is, and that's not what it's going to be. It's going to be a database of the incidents and the types of cancer that we've had in the islands, and it will have some demographic information in terms of male, female, age groups, and so on. But you won't be able to go in and see that it's my information in there. So the law sort of reinforces that confidentiality and makes it much clearer, we think, in terms of what the provisions are to protect that information. But I think, we can't really underscore the importance of getting this data enough. As Councillor said, anecdotally, we all know somebody, we've all heard stories. All of us have been touched one way or the other by cancer. And it's one of those, is it that we do in fact have a higher incidence of cancer, or is it just that we have a smaller community with a tighter knit community, and so more people hear more about it? It becomes more
magnified. Yes.
So we're hoping that by putting this legislation in place, making it mandatory for the cancer to be reported, that we'll get a more complete picture and be able to make some policy decisions and some information for the public to say either, yes, here's the situation, we have a high incidence of a particular type of cancer, or actually the data suggests that we don't.
Okay. Now, the word mandatory may be concerning to some of our listeners or to those persons who will participate in this. Can you explain how it will work in terms of being mandatory? Will it require physicians to register, or will it require the individual who is suffering from a particular type of cancer to register?
The requirement is on the physician. So it's not that members of the public will be prosecuted if they don't report their cancer. The onus is being put on the physician who receives the test result that confirms the presence of cancer.
Excellent.
Or in the case of a post-mortem, if a post-mortem is done and in the course of that it's determined that there was a tumor that hadn't been diagnosed before, then the onus is on the individual performing that.
Now, last week we had on the show, I think it was we had on For the Record, as well as on Talk Today, Brenda Archer from the Brain Tumor Foundation. How will organizations like the Brain Tumor Foundation be able to link in, with this registry? And the other question would be, if someone is suffering and they're treated overseas, more than likely they would have been referred overseas by a physician here. So that, I guess, that would cover the area in terms of missing anyone who may be treated overseas.
Yeah, that should be the situation. The registry, the legislation that's being proposed, is requiring the reporting of brain tumors as well, and not just malignant ones, but all brain tumors are being captured under this legislation, and that's because the clinicians have made that recommendation based on how brain tumors, even benign ones, can often be precursors to other cancers, and that they thought it was important to be able to capture that data as well, and so organizations like Miss Archer's Brain Tumor Foundation here will be able to get the data from the registry. We'll also be able to help us, we're hoping, promote people making sure that their data is getting submitted to the registry, and hopefully, the data that comes out of it will be tools for them to use in terms of their education programs, their support to patients, and so on.
Excellent. Councillor, any more to add?
Not right offhand. I think it's important to know, and for the public to know, that there will be a cancer registry board as well that oversees this legislation and the actual register itself, and they will have their own responsibilities and functions as a board to provide and ensure compliance with the law, and that there are no breaches.
Okay, and their appointment would be based on. Okay, we see here about the function, and
well, the board, if I could pick up on that theme with you, OC, the board will consist of 10 members, including the registrar as an ex officio and secretary to the board. But the other members of that board will comprise the CEO of the Health Services Authority, the medical director of the Health Services Authority, the chairman of the Cayman Islands Cancer Society, the medical director of the Cayman Islands Cancer Society, the pathologist from the Health Services Authority, a medical doctor or dentist who is not an employee of the HSA, a member of the public who is not registered as a practitioner under the health practice law. That essentially means a layperson, someone not connected with health in any way, but just an ordinary citizen. And then finally, an attorney at law will be on that committee.
Okay, and their appointment is going to be made by cabinet, by
that would through the traditional process, not be done by the cabinet and approved by them.
Yeah, and so the board, as you mentioned, they're going to have several roles and responsibilities, and basically they'll be responsible for making sure that the registry is functioning the way that it is, or that it should be, and that the registrar is functioning as the registrar should be. and they'll also be responsible for compiling and submitting reports to the Minister of Health regarding the data that's collected in aggregate.
Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Auret Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning, we have MLA who represents the District of Georgetown in the Legislative Assembly, and Councillor Mr. Roy McTaggart. We also have Ms. Jennifer Ahern, who is the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health and Culture. We're discussing the Cancer Registry Bill, which is going to be out for consultation soon. We're going to go to a time check and then the news. We ask you to keep the dial tuned to 89.9 Radio Cayman and For the Record, as we will be back immediately after the news. That's a tongue twister there. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Auret Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning, we have MLA who represents the District of Georgetown, and he's also the Councillor in the Ministry of Health, Mr. Roy McTaggart. We also have Ms. Jennifer Ahern, who's the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health and Culture. We're discussing the Cancer Registry Bill that has been introduced in the Cayman Islands. Before I go any further, I just want to again remind you that For the Record is brought to you by Seagrape Secretarial Services. They are located at Unit Number 2, Grand Plaza, Howard Street, Georgetown. Their telephone numbers are 326-9953 and 924-8927. Seagrape Secretarial Services provide quality, professional, and affordable service, and that service is guaranteed. At Seagrape Secretarial Services, there is no job too small for them to undertake. Again, thank you to Seagrape Secretarial Services. Ms. Jennifer, I'm sure that someone didn't just wake up one morning and say, you know something? I think it's a good idea to have a cancer registry in the Cayman Islands. This wasn't just by accident. What's the genesis of this?
Well, as the councillor mentioned in his opening comments, the registry was established in 2010, initially with the Cancer Society, the Health Services Authority, and the Ministry, and the registry moved forward with looking at how to promote that they were there and encouraging people to make the reports to them regarding any cancers that themselves or their family members had. But at our healthcare conference in 2012, we had a number of topic-specific breakout sessions as part of that conference, and one of them focused on oncology, on cancer, and the feedback that the ministry got from that. And in that session, it was like a facilitated discussion of the delegates who were at the conference, and an opportunity for them to sort of make their voices heard in terms of their concerns regarding oncology and cancer treatment in the Cayman Islands. And one of the recommendations that came out of that discussion of the delegates was that we really need to have a better picture in terms of what the incidence of cancer is, and that we had this tool already, the Cancer Registry, but we needed to find a way to make sure that it was getting utilized. And the recommendation that came out was that we look at legislation to make it mandatory for these cancers to be reported. So it's one of those things, and I think I mentioned to you on the break that occasionally, we have this annual healthcare conference, and sometimes people will say, well, so what? You've had a great conference, you've had a really successful few days, well, what has come out of it? And this is just one of a concrete example, a tangible example of how that conference has helped us facilitate and promote the conversation regarding the country's needs in health, and things that we need to do to move it forward. So it seems to have taken us a while to get here. from October 2012 to now to have this legislation. But obviously, and you'll remember from your life as a cab sec that, the process takes time. There's a lot of research that goes into it. There's a lot of back and forth. But really excited
and
that
then
we're here
now. Legislative drafting, having to do their work, not easy.
No, they have a tough job, and they have to make sure that every word and every piece of punctuation is as it should be, to make sure that we're not having any unintended consequences coming from the legislation that we're putting forward. So
and hence the public consultation as well, because those experts out there, as well as the lawyers, will have an opportunity to look at this bill and to point out any possible defects in the bill at this point in time. That's what the public consultation part of it is all about. Now, sometimes I get extremely skeptical about public consultations, because you call for the public to give their input. You will have meetings in the community, and the attendance is poor. And then when it comes just before the deadline for the consultation to end, you get a flurry of activity and people calling on you to extend the time frame because they have not had an opportunity, to do so. So, your public consultation will involve district meetings as well with this?
No, actually, at this point in time, what we're planning to do is we have the press conference tomorrow when we're actually putting the legislation up on our ministry's website, as well as a comment sheet for people to be able to use to actually submit their comments or their concerns. And basically, we'll then probably be coming back again to see you again and doing some other appearances on Daybreak and so on. And if as we're going down the road with this, we believe that there is a need for us to have some face-to-face meetings, then certainly we would be looking at doing that. But as you said, quite often you set these meetings up, you get all geared up, and you book the room and you get the refreshments and you put the presentation together and you go out and you get half a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen people at the most, sometimes depending. So we sort of sat back and thought that the main thing for us is to try and get the message out to people that this is out there for consultation, encourage people to familiarize themselves with the legislation and to get their comments into us. And as we go, we'll see if there's a need for anything in terms of a public meeting.
The only thing I'd add to that, one thing to emphasize what I said at the very outset, this 30-day consultation period is in addition to what's required statutorily, which requires that 21-day consultation as well. Right. So, I mean, you're looking at almost 2 months of consultation on what is, in my mind, fairly, it's not a very onerous bill in terms of the content. Something like 12 clauses or something like that. So it's very easy for people to be able to read through it and to see what the provisions are, and it really is up to the public now to take the initiative to if they're interested to familiarize themselves and to provide that input back to the ministry.
Well, let's see if we can pique the public's interest in this, especially those, amongst our listening audience who would have an interest in this. And if we start to look at some of the clauses, you mentioned, there are several clauses, in the bill, not as many as would normally be in a standard bill. So we have anywhere between 12 and 15 clauses in there. And the real important ones, let's look at Clause 3, which provides for the establishment of the Cancer Registry and sets out its purpose. The purpose of the registry, the purposes of the registry are, amongst other things, to compile a statistical record on the incidence of cancer and brain tumors and to provide data that will facilitate program planning for research into cancer and brain tumors and the prevention, of them. And again, we spoke earlier, how helpful would this be, let's say, to a family member to know that quite possibly other family members, may be hereditary, that have had some form of cancer, and can give them the advanced information that they will need to first of all have regular checks done, to to expose any incidents or the possibility of that person contracting some sort of cancer.
Well, also, one thing I would say about this in actual requirement for this registry is that it dovetails quite nicely. It fits in very nicely with a number of the objectives of or is it the strategic health plan?
Our national health policy.
National health policy
Yeah.
that we have. If I could just maybe identify a couple of them that we have of these strategies. Strategy number 7 requires that we develop a robust health information system that with multi-agency linkages to improve the quality and coverage of health relevant information to be used for decision making. So that fits in quite nicely with that strategy. Also, strategy number 8, to promote increased research for the production, dissemination, and utilization of health relevant information, knowledge, and scientific evidence for decision making. Go back, strategy number 5, achieve an educated, empowered, health conscious population. So, this does dovetail quite nicely in with this legislation. We are fulfilling that mandate and helping to achieve the objectives of the national health policy.
Okay.
Yeah, and picking up on the issue of hereditary information and being able to access the benefit that it could be to the public, it's not as big of a benefit currently, because hopefully you'll know now if somebody in your family is suffering from cancer. But in a generation or two, to be able to write to the registry and get that historic data and say, this is my family, can you confirm whether there's an incidence of cancer in my history, and so on, definitely can help in that regard as well. And as the councillor said, one of our strategic directions about an educated, empowered, health-conscious population. If people know that there's a particular prevalence or a higher incidence of a certain type of cancer, then they're probably in their family or in their area, they'll increase their preventative efforts and just be more aware of some of the choices that they need to make.
And let's just talk again and reiterate the point about confidentiality and people's concerns. And when we look at, for instance, clause 13, we see there that the data collected becomes an exempt record. You want to explain that to our listening audience?
I think best way to describe it, OC, is that it's exempt from FOI.
FOI, yeah.
Yeah, from the FOI legislation, which ought to give the public, I think, a lot of confidence that, someone just can't apply for this information and just get, and get all the names of every person on that register. It can't happen. It's exempt. And looking also at clause 10, which deals with the confidentiality, because what it seeks to do is to achieve and ensure that all data received by the cancer registry is confidential. Any data released or disclosed will be for compiling statistical records of the incidence of cancer and brain tumor, and to facilitate research into cancer and brain tumors, and to examine the mortality from cancer and brain tumors. It also provides some significant fines for breaches of confidentiality if the information is if confidentiality is breached. It's a $10,000 fine, and if anyone misuses the data, who acquires the data but misuses it, there are provisions there for a $15,000 fine. So a very strong effort here to ensure that people's data is kept confidential and that the data is not misused by anyone. And the limitations as well on who can actually access that data provides, I think, the comfort. I think it's also important for us to understand that we're not reinventing the wheel here with this legislation. Cancer registries are quite common throughout the developed world. And in particular, just chatting with Ms. Ahern here while we were on the break, I think, we looked at a number of countries, but New Zealand in particular was one where we who have similar legislation like this that was looked at quite closely. But we know that they've got cancer registries in the United States, Canada, I think probably 2 in the UK. But whether these are public, I just don't know at this point.
And and I think, as I mentioned earlier, that the issue of confidentiality, the concerns about confidentiality was probably the most often heard reason why people weren't utilizing the registry now, in sort of discussions and anecdotal accounts. And I should hasten to add that they're unfounded concerns, because the confidentiality of the registry now is as robust as it's going to be once the legislation is in place. The difference is just that by having the legislation in place and these clauses that we've just been discussing in the legislation, it will be absolutely clear in black and white. Here's how the data is being protected. Here's how your personal information is being protected and held in confidence. And that should, as the counselor said, it should give people a lot of comfort in terms of being able to know that when their information goes into the registry, it's going to be held in the strictest of confidence and only allowed to be used appropriately.
And certainly, when data protection legislation comes into effect as well, that will, reinforce that again. Yeah, I have another layer of it as well. Yeah.
But, continuing with the theme of the discussion with regard to confidentiality, I mean, we've seen now that we've had this voluntary cancer registry since 2010, so better part of 5 years now. And I don't think we've ever had any complaint or any suggestion of any improper use of the data that has been collected thus far. So I think there's a strong culture that exists as well of protecting the privacy of that information. So one of the things I would like to do as well here this morning, OC, is to encourage your listeners, those who who may have cancer that exists in their family at this present time, would be to ask their doctors to go ahead and report it and make that information available to the existing registry, because this legislation itself is not retroactive. So it's doctors are not going to be forced to go back and report what they potentially already know.
Yes, and that's extremely important.
And that's extremely important.
Yes,
so effectively, a significant portion of existing cancers that haven't been reported could remain unreported and skew the data somewhat, not give us a complete picture. So we want to encourage the public to ask their doctors to go ahead and report this information voluntarily.
Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning, we have MLA and Councillor, MLA for the District of Georgetown and Councillor in the Ministry of Health, Mr. Roy McTaggart. We also have Ms. Jennifer Ahern, who is the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health and Culture. We're talking about the Cancer Registry Bill that is going to be out for a public consultation soon, and then from there on it will be sent to the Legislative Assembly, hopefully for passage in the Legislative Assembly. This certainly is not a political issue, so we should expect to see cross-partisan agreement on this and support on this as well. We're going to go to a break at this point in time. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor. My guests, I will remind you again, in the studio with me this morning, we have MLA who represents the District of Georgetown and Councillor in the Ministry of Health, Mr. Roy McTaggart. We also have in the studio with us Ms. Jennifer Ahern, who is the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health and Culture, and we're discussing the Cancer Registry Bill in the Cayman Islands. For those of you who may think that this is a dull subject, it isn't. It is important to each and every one of us, because cancer, the incidence of cancer, it has no bounds whatsoever. It is indiscriminate. It can affect any one of us, any of our family members as well. And in some instances, the risk is much higher, especially if it's already existing, within the family line. So it is extremely important. We heard Councillor and MLA, Mr. McTaggart, talk about the importance of it and encouraging you, our listening audience, to go ahead and become a part. If you're affected by cancer, become a part of that registry already, that already exists in the Cayman Islands, and we will be giving you more information, about that registry and what you can do in terms of telling your doctor or pushing to ensure that your name or a family member's name is included, information is included, on that as well. We have 2 callers online, so we're going to take those callers now. Let's take the first caller. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, OC, and good morning, Mr. McTaggart and Miss Ahern.
Morning, Rupert.
Good morning.
This is one of my pet peeves, I guess you might say, that when they talk about cancer, and since 1940, I think in 1944, they've been trying to find a cure for cancer. Of course, they have a cure for cancer, but nobody wants to put it on the market because it would destroy the profits of the big pharmaceutical companies and people that do things like radiation and chemo and all that. By the way, chemo is one of them things that was used during World War II to kill the Jews. That's one of the things that Hitler used to kill the Jews. So my thing is this. Every year I hear the Cancer Society and other people talking about these big to-dos they have down at the Ritz-Carlton. And it's not just in Cayman. It's all over the world that they have these things. But there is cure for cancer. There is one doctor in New York, I can't remember his name, is Italian, who uses ozone to cure cancer. If you go online, you can check it out. There's a doctor in Houston, Texas, Dr. Down there, he does something else he discovered. I think it's called, I don't remember the exact what it's called, but he got something, and people go to him, and he cured even brain cancer and all that, which is one of the most difficult ones to get rid of. And over the years, I used to, support all this stuff, and all of a sudden, I realized that, there's things that can be done, but I've never heard the Cancer Society in Cayman talk about ways to prevent cancer, like things that you can do to prevent cancer. It's always about raising money at these functions, and I don't know if you guys know it, but if you go, you can find, again, information on how much of that money is used for actually the work of curing cancer, trying to doing something about cancer. It's like 5%. I think last year they collected something like $100 and some odd billion dollars that they
you're talking about internationally, not here in the Cayman Islands.
Not
because
here in
a lot of what goes on in the Cayman Islands, as far as the Cancer Society is concerned, is voluntary, as opposed to people being salaried.
I mean, I know that. But what I'm saying is that it hurts me to see the number of people that. Let me give you an example. Most people don't know that Ronald Reagan had cancer. Ronald Reagan was seriously ill with cancer, but he didn't go to one of these places and take chemo and radiation and stuff. One of these doctors, the same doctor I'm talking about, was that then other celebrities that go to these people and they get cured. You can go online and see all this stuff.
Caller, you also recognize that there are various types of cancers, different types of cancers, and not necessarily the same treatment, for everyone. I'm a little skeptical about your position, the position that you take, that there are cures for cancer, and it's only being those cures are only being held back, for people to make money. I'm a little skeptical, about that one, based on all of the research and money that has been spent in terms of researching, cancers.
I think one of the challenges with cancer research is, as you've said, it's that every cancer is a bit different, and even one breast cancer to the next, as I understand it, can behave very differently and respond very differently to different treatments. But I think it's important to sort of clarify that the role of the Cancer Society here and the work that they do here, and what they do with the funds that are raised by them, there isn't really enough time in this show to sort of talk about all the good work that the Cancer Society has done. But certainly I think that they are very good at putting out public education, talking about steps that we as individuals can take in terms of prevention, just heightening the awareness of different types of cancers and the things that we should all be aware of around those. And they provide a lot of support to cancer patients and their families, both financial support to help with some of the costs, because it is a very expensive disease to treat, and sometimes people's insurance benefits don't cover it all. So they do provide a lot of financial support. And the Breast Cancer Foundation, which is another group here that does a very big, they do the big pink tie fundraising gala at the Ritz. They provide a tremendous amount of support to the cancer patients and their families to help them deal with one less stress of having cancer. I mean, you can imagine how difficult it must be to be fighting cancer, never mind having to worry about how you're going to be able to continue to afford the treatment and the care that you're getting. So having groups like the Breast Cancer Foundation, like the Cancer Society, who assist with the fundraising and really heightening the awareness of it and helping those families, I think is really key. The Cancer Society has also been really pivotal in things like the mammogram machine at the Health Services Authority. The Lions Club of Tropical Gardens do a great job with Breast Cancer Month and working with the Cancer Society and the HSA to get as many mammograms as they can for women, talking about prevention. Another thing that was in the news recently that the Cancer Society played a key role in was the petition, the online petition, supporting HPV vaccination to help try and prevent and reduce cervical cancer. So I think there's a lot of things that are going on in the Cayman Islands around public education, support for cancer patients, cancer survivors, and their families. The areas of research, obviously, it's a multi-million, probably billion-dollar thing that goes on globally. And we do have some local practitioners who are looking at some clinical trials for some really innovative treatments. But, obviously we're a smaller player on the world stage in the area of research.
Exactly. Caller, any final words?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, I'm not doing this to be.
We understand.
The thing is this. What I'm saying, I heard Ms. Ahern talk about, the all the research that they're doing. They have. Let me put it this. I'm going to put it in simple terms. The reason why things like cancer is never going to find a cure in our lifetime, according to the big pharmaceutical companies and stuff. There's too much money being made by things like chemo and radiation. By the way, Ms. Ahern, you talked about the mammogram thing. They got a 3D mammogram now that uses three times the amount of radiation, because they use radiation when they do these things. And they say that is also a thing that causes cancer. One of the very things that's supposed to be helpful in there is causing cancer. Don't take my word for it. This is stuff that I've done research, and coming from not from the pharmaceutical companies, but from doctors that are researching this on their own. But you don't hear a lot of publications on their stuff because the pharmaceutical companies don't want people to know about this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, but it's a good thing to do, to notify or try to remind people about things you can do to cure, help not cure, but to help prevent.
Yeah. Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much, caller, for that. We ask you to leave us there. Next caller, please. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Connor, Mr. McTaggart, and Ms. Ahern.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Daphne.
Thank you very much. Listen, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but when it comes to research and trying to find a cure for cancer, I don't think I have an answer for it, but I am confident enough to believe that just like, diseases like polio, there was a time when they never thought they might find a cure for it, and it was found. And there are many, and of course that polio had devastating effects on the individuals that were affected by it. I mean, it was a terrible disease to have had way back then. But they found, and they continue to find cures. And as we speak, as we discuss the subject, I'm sure that there are ongoing efforts to try to find a cure. And I believe that many inroads have been made, a lot of progress, and hopefully this will continue. But that we will realize that maybe there are many things that are grown naturally right there in nature that maybe something will be found, and I hope shortly, because I don't need to go into the details about what this has caused to individuals and families and everything else. But I am most grateful for the effort of the societies here who focus their attention on the disease and what we can do to assist, not only trying to find a cure, but trying to assist those who have been, affected by that disease. Having said that, the subject that you're on about the confidentiality and the registry and so on, I think that is a move in the right direction. And I trust that individuals will recognize the importance of this legislation. The other thing I'd like to close with is to say that I listened to the State of the Nation address last week, and I must tell you that as far as I'm concerned, I thought this was an absolutely great, all I can say is that if I were scoring a report card, this would have to be scored as excellent. And I want to congratulate the government and Mr. McTaggart. I know that, your expertise and expertise of all those others there are being used, and you're able to contribute to your country now. Probably this for where you have retired from one important role, and now to be able to work with a team of individuals like you're able to work with there in the government. It has to bring you a real feeling of accomplishment and being able to do what you're doing with all that you've learned over the years. I pray that things will continue and that the government will go from strength to strength. I am, for one, very, very grateful. I thought the report, the State of the Nation address was excellent, and we look forward to even greater things.
Thank you very much, Ms. Daphne. Thank you.
And just to say thank you to Ms. Daphne for your comments. I'll be happy to let the caucus know later today your comments and commendations. And just to say to you too, yes, I work with some excellent people within the government and ministries. They're as good as anybody anywhere else, and it truly is not beneficial, but encouraging to me and very rewarding to work with the people that I do.
And I just want to add, that I think everybody agrees in terms of the hope that we will one day find a cure for cancer. I think everybody who has been affected by it really prays that there will come a time where we'll be able to look back and say, thank God that we found that.
Yeah.
Thank God that people continue to support the research. And I guess one of the things I would say is that having your information or your loved one's information put in this cancer registry is an opportunity for you to be part of working towards finding, hopefully, that cure. It's so important for us to have this data so that we have a picture of cancer in the Cayman Islands, and it's an opportunity for us as individuals to play some small role in hopefully coming to that ultimate goal one day of being able to say, we don't need this registry anymore. They've found the cure for all cancers, and we can all move on.
Yeah. Now we seen some stuff here online that talks about the value of cancer registry, and you've mentioned some of this already. It helps to identify high-risk groups. You end up with increased screening in underserved areas. We have that more in larger countries than in the Cayman Islands, but we do have our underserved areas here. It may not be underserved to the in the general meaning of the word, but we do have people who simply don't necessarily monitor their health and have the regular checkups that they should, either for financial or other reasons. And also cancer registries help to investigate possible cancer causes as well. Now, as far as our registry that we spoke about here earlier, Ms. Jennifer, is there anything that we can share with our listening audience in terms of how they can get the information that's out there already, or add to the information that's out there?
Yeah, our registrar is Amanda Frank, and she can reach her at Amanda, AMANDA .FRANCK@hsa.ky. So she would be available to help answer anybody's questions about how to get their information into the registry. You can also contact the Cancer Society. Jennifer Weber there, her email is Jennifer, JENNIFER, @CICS.ky. And I know she's standing by to assist anybody who might have any questions about it as well. So yeah, just to encourage people to find out more and to get the information submitted to the registry.
Okay. See, I'm seeing something else that's interesting here, and I realize that none of us here are health practitioners, but for instance, it appears as if people who receive organ transplants sometimes run the risk of, contracting cancer, getting cancer as well, simply because the person that they may have received that organ transplant from may have had some evidence of cancer as well. Again, looking at that hereditary line and knowing all of these things, a tremendous amount of work, but a tremendous amount of data that can be extracted, if a registry is established.
Yeah. No, I would think that there has to be some risk, but I would imagine that before, a transplant is made, that they ensure that, that the organ itself is free of cancer, but that doesn't preclude what the donor, any predisposition that a donor may have had for cancer to I'm trying. I lost my train of thought.
To
here.
be
I was saying
identified, for
the word
cancer to be identified.
Yep,
Yes,
you're right.
yes, yeah. I think we have one caller online. Let's grab that caller. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Hi, O.C. Lucille Seymour.
Good morning, Miss Lucille. How are you?
I'm great. I've had cancer since I was a cancer survivor from 1998.
Wow.
I want to make a couple of points, and I want to give kudos to our health services, because I believe why people are hearing in the Cayman Islands so much about cancer is because people are going to we have a great health service that unearths a lot of things. I can attest to that. So therefore, you will find more persons that are as a fact that have cancer. Years ago, when my grandmother died and she had almost the same symptoms, we couldn't say it was cancer because we didn't have the health services that we have today. So we want to give the health services good kudos. Secondly, I want to say that the Cancer Society, what they do with their money, and we have to really welcome them and say thank you to them, because what they do, there are a lot of people that are underprivileged people that get cancer, and they can't afford to be away from work and to be getting all these different medicines and so. But the Cancer Society comes by and helps them. I know that is a fact. And the more money that we can put into it, I think the more the people of the lesser privileged people will be able to be helped. They are able to get well again and go back to work. And it is you have to be there to see what they do with those people. And I don't want anybody to downplay that, or the role of the Cancer Society in the Cayman Islands. Yes, they may not be strong in the research, but that I don't think that's what that is one of their main objectives.
Yes.
So I wanted to say that, and also to say that we have to talk a lot about our own way of style of living, the way we live, lifestyle. Also in terms of how, because all of us have cancer cells, they just don't mature in the way that they matured with me. And I just think we all have to look at our own health habits and what we do, and that is one way we can prevent cancer from blossoming out in our bodies. I just wanted to say that, O.C., and thanks very much, and a good program.
Thank you very much, Miss Lucille. Thank you very much, for that.
Getting back though to the prevalence though, O.C., of cancer registries over the world. I mean, the World Health Organization actively encourages countries to implement a registry. And they believe, and have recently reported, that they expect that there will be a significant increase in the diagnosis of cancers throughout the world. Not necessarily because that it's increased, but just simply because of better reporting, better information. And really, my view is that for any registry to be truly successful, there has to be some sort of automatic or reporting mechanism or a mandatory reporting mechanism to make it work. I mean, there are probably well over 100 countries right now that have these sorts of registries. So if, as it goes back to the point I was making earlier, that we're not reinventing the wheel here with regard to what we're trying to accomplish with the registry.
Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning, we have MLA, who represents the District of Georgetown and who is also the counselor in the Ministry of Health, Mr. Roy McTaggart. We also have Ms. Jennifer Ahern, who is the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health and Culture. And we are discussing this morning the Cancer Registry Bill in the Cayman Islands that will be put out for public consultation. As we have always reminded you and told you that For the Record, we'll keep you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. In this case, we're talking about things that play out in the local scene, something that is extremely important to all of us, and that is our health. We're going to go to the news headlines at this point in time, and when we return, we'll be on the last half hour of our show. So if you want to have your say, if you have any ideas, any questions, you'll have a half an hour to more to do that. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're discussing the Cancer Registry Bill in the Cayman Islands that is going to be out for public consultation and then for onward transmission for hopeful passage in our Legislative Assembly. I say hopeful, but we remain extremely confident because we believe that this is not an issue that will have any political overtones whatsoever and should see full acceptance by our Legislative Assembly. And this discussion is taking place this morning with MLA for the District of Georgetown and Counselor in the Ministry of Health, Mr. Roy McTaggart. Also joining us in the conversation is Ms. Jennifer Ahern, who's the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health and Culture. And I also want to remind you that our phone lines are still open. You can call us on our toll-free number, which is the compliments of Lime, and it is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-3037 and also 949-6990. So our phone lines are open if you want to call us. Yeah, sorry. That's 949-8037 rather than 949-3037. You may get, not for the record, but on the record, that may be somewhere else that you may find. Sorry about that. 949-8037. Again, I'm going to go back to our two guests in the studio, but before I go back, at one point in time in the Cayman Islands, when again, Miss Lucille mentioned the fact that her grandmother, died of cancer, and at that time possibly didn't know whether or not it was cancer. Then there was also a point in time in the Cayman Islands and worldwide as well when there was a stigma attached to cancer, and when someone was suffering from cancer, there was, so much, everything was quiet. They were silent. They would never tell you, what the person was suffering, from. And then also in the Cayman Islands, when we started to see the incidence or know about the incidence of cancer, there were some people who were skeptical about whether or not the aerial spraying that was taking place for mosquitoes, whether or not that was the cause of cancer as well. And of course, all of this data will help to in terms of the research for it. Now in the Cayman Islands, a little bit more difficult because we're 144 square miles. The spraying takes place, throughout the island, so it will be extremely difficult to figure out whether or not, people in West Bay are more susceptible, to incidences of cancer because the spraying takes place, elsewhere. But when it comes to, let's say, drinking water, well water, and things of that nature, those things are, much more easy to identify. But again, the data helps to investigate the possible causes of cancer as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, I just wanted to say in terms of the aerial spraying and the fogging that MRCU does, just to reassure everybody that the products that they use and have used in the past are all labeled, which means that they're okayed for use by the Environmental Protection Agency in the U.S. So they're subjected to very high standards of review and analysis in terms of the specificity of the action of the pesticide. So the ones that MRCU is using are very specific in terms of the target that they affect. So they are effective on mosquitoes. Some of them are mosquitoes and black flies, but they don't persist in the environment. That's the other thing to keep in mind as well, is that most of these insecticides, the active ingredient breaks down under UV, under ultraviolet light in the sun. So it's very unlikely that there's been any sort of bioaccumulation of these pesticide residues.
But in the past, we did use things like DDT and stuff like that, which were highly, highly toxic. And then when you look at in the United States and you see, all of the lawsuits and the funds that have been put aside for abscessus and mesothelioma and things of that nature, we do have to admit that in the past there were products that were used that were highly, highly toxic.
I would have to double check on that with the director of MRCU, but I don't think that DDT was very widely used. I would have to just confirm that with him, and I'll try and do that on the break. But but the other thing to keep in mind as well is that the concentration of the insecticide that's being applied is very, very low. We're talking about sort of tablespoons per hectare that is applied. And basically the other thing to bear in mind as well is that, the staff at MRCU, they all live here too. And they all have children here as well. And so they wouldn't be putting anything out into the environment that was potentially going to be harmful for us.
I don't get me wrong, not casting any aspersions in terms of, what's happening now. But, I just mentioned it to the fact that there were so many people out there talking about, when we started to see these, high incidences of cancer in the Cayman Islands. And like I say, it probably was there before, but not identifiable because of lack of awareness, in terms of, what was going on, as well. Let's get back to the positive aspects of
this. But certainly
now.
Having the information from the cancer registry will assist in either confirming or refuting some of these concerns that people have had in the past. So it's really important that we get the information, we get the data, and we're able to identify if there's clusters in a particular place of a certain type of cancer, and then perhaps look more into what the causes might be to those situations.
Yep, definitely. Mr. McTaggart?
No, sir. I know we into the second last segment.
We have about 20 minutes left.
I don't mind if it's appropriate time for me just to pause and make my shameless plug for the morning. But
Sure.
Just to remind everyone that the Cayman Islands Cancer Society will be hosting their annual Valentine Mile Walk Run this coming Sunday afternoon. It will be at 4 p.m. and it will be starting at and ending at the Bayshore Mall. So I want to encourage people to come out and support them. Registration is from 2:30 to 3:45 on the day of the event. $15 registration fee for adults, $5 for juniors, and free for all kids under the age of 10. So it normally is a very well-supported event, and we want to encourage the public as well to come out on this Sunday. Support the Cancer Society, do great work. It's a fundraising effort for them. And, I know with that society, the work that they do, every penny goes towards, it's being spent in a very effective way in caring for cancer patients. And providing information. to the
Definitely,
public.
and we saw the tremendous amount of support that they got on the walk run.
Stride, yeah.
Amazing. Every year, I
Gets bigger and
take
bigger.
the opportunity to ride the course, and the amount of people who were on that course last month is unbelievable.
Yeah, they broke a
And
record this year.
I would venture to say that it just simply weren't people who were interested in getting in an exercise and walking, but people who identified with the cause in one way or the other, either by having a family member who was affected, by cancer or something of that nature, or knowing a friend who may have been affected by it as well.
I think you're dead right. I was going to pause and ask you, why do you think that is, OC? And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's because so many people are affected by cancer in this country and worldwide. We all know we got friends, we got family affected by it.
Yeah,
And we all want to see a cure. We all want to see these diseases being dealt with and eradicated from our lives. And like others, I believe very firmly we will get to that point at some point.
Yeah.
It will happen.
Yeah, I mean, you see people being proactive about it. Look at notable people like Angelina Jolie, who's gone ahead and had surgery done before it actually comes along to to prevent it. So these are the proactive steps that people are taking now as well.
Yeah. Sorry, I've just had a message back from the director of MRCU, who confirms that Dr. Giglioli was aware of the concerns around DDT when they came out, and that as far as the director's aware, DDT was not used.
Okay, well that's good.
Cayman
Yeah,
Islands.
that's good to know. Yeah.
But just to also echo Councillor McTaggart, just to encourage everybody to please do come out and support the Cancer Society on Sunday. I think you can register in advance if you want to, and the best person to contact is Jennifer Weber at the Cancer Society, and her email, as I said earlier, is jennifer@cics.ky.
Let's go back to the public consultation again. No public meetings per se, but will you be meeting with core groups on this to get feedback? Let's say, for instance, medical association, whatever exists amongst doctors and medical practitioners, Cancer Society, lawyers. Tell us about it.
Well, we're certainly going to reach out to the CIMDS, the Cayman Islands Medical and Dental Society, to their chairman and provide them with a copy of the legislation and encourage them to get their members to review it and to get us their comments. If they want to meet with us, we'll certainly make ourselves available for that. The Cancer Society have been a key stakeholder in terms of the group that has moved this legislation forward. So they've been at the table through the process, and we're very grateful for their support in this process. It's really been really instrumental in us being able to reach the point that we have reached. And they've also been reaching out to some of their stakeholders as we've been working through it, letting them know that this legislation's in the works and some of the provisions that we're talking about putting in place. So we're really grateful for their partnership in this as well. And certainly, if as we go out with the consultation, if there's a particular stakeholder group that wants us to come and meet with them, we'll definitely make ourselves available for that, because this is such an important piece of legislation in terms of the potential impact that it's going to have on all of our lives. And we just want to do everything we can to make sure people are aware of it, that they have an opportunity to review it, and to let us know if they have any concerns with it.
And Councillor McTaggart, in terms of the sitting of the Legislative Assembly, once the consultation period is over, are we looking someplace around September possible for this to go to the Legislative Assembly?
I would think absolutely no later than that time, OC. I would hope that we could get it in for the May-June setting. When I think of the consultation period, now we've got 30 days consultation to...
and then the feedback.
Then you've got to assimilate any feedback and make any changes.
I think we'll push it as fast as we
can. Yeah. I think we want to see it done as quickly as possible, but I would hope we should be able to get this done, by September.
Okay. I think I've exhausted probably all of my questions for now, but I'm sure that there are more things that you want to highlight, Ms. Jennifer. I know, some interested groups have been, providing information to you and everything else. Anything that else that we want to talk about?
Well, again, a thank you to the Cancer Society, who sent me a couple of emails while we've been sitting here with some more information. Just to let everybody know that we will be posting this on the ministry's website starting tomorrow, which is www.ministryofhealth.gov.ky. So the draft bill will be up on our website tomorrow, along with a feedback form that the public can use. But you don't need to only use the form. By all means, if you just want to send us a letter, send us an email, just with your comments, that will be welcomed as well. And as Councillor has said, it's a 30-day public consultation period, and we just want to really encourage everybody to take the time to read the bill. It isn't a very lengthy bill. It's a short bill, and it's quite straightforward and should be easily read. Read the bill, take a look, see what questions you might have about it. Keep tuned to the media for the presentations that we're going to be making over the next few weeks, and see what questions we answer for you. But by all means, take the time, read the bill, and send us your feedback.
Okay. Yep, I'm told we have to take a break now. So, folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Art Connor. My guest in studio with me this morning, we have MLA, who represents the District of Georgetown, and he's also Counselor in the Ministry of Health, Mr. Roy McTaggart. We also have Ms. Jennifer Ahern, who's the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health and Culture, and we're discussing the Cancer Registry Bill for the Cayman Islands. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. And welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Art Connor. We're discussing the Cancer Registry Bill in the Cayman Islands. And, in on that discussion is MLA for the District of Georgetown and Councillor in the Ministry of Health, Mr. Roy McTaggart. We also have Ms. Jennifer Ahern, who is the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health and Culture. Just want to look at cancer registries in the Caribbean. And just to say, sometimes people have a tendency to say, well, why do we need such a thing in the Cayman Islands? Or are we following someone else? Or this is a new concept that we're trying to develop for ourselves? And just to point out that there are currently 7 known cancer registries in the Caribbean, island nations. And there are others that are under discussion. For instance, a national cancer registry in the Bahamas, the establishment of that is imminent. We have a national cancer registry in Cuba, and that was established in 1964, possibly the first one in the Caribbean. We have a national cancer registry in Grenada, established in 2008, where there has been a prostate cancer registry since 1995. We have an urban cancer registry for Eastern Jamaica, established in 1959. Wow. A national cancer registry in Martinique, established in 1983. A national cancer registry in the Netherlands, Antilles, established in 1977, and a national cancer registry in Trinidad and Tobago, established in 1994. So it looks like the one in Jamaica, Eastern Jamaica, 1959, even earlier than Cuba, as well. And
I think the difference is that Cuba is national, and the Jamaican one seems to be more like regional.
Yes.
Eastern part of the island.
Precisely. Okay, good point. And just a notation here, it should be noted, however, that a cancer registry is only as good as the data that it collects.
Absolutely.
And it says here, in most major countries today, it is mandatory that every cancer diagnosis and death is reported to the national or regional cancer registries, so that a complete picture is available of the risks for a diagnosis and death from specific forms of cancer in that country. So that again, is what we're trying to emphasize to our listening audience, to the public here in the Cayman Islands, to that audience that you will be going out to with your public consultation, the extreme importance of this registry. Ms. Jennifer.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It is something that has been established globally in a number of countries. The benefits of it have been seen in many other jurisdictions, and now it's our opportunity to make it mandatory here. We already have the registry established, but just to increase the uptake and its use so that we have a robust set of data and information to help guide our decision makers in terms of targeting our resources. I'm sure everybody has heard about the challenges that government faces with their resources, and we want to make sure that as the country's making investments in treatment and equipment and so on, that we are targeting the right ones that give us the best, sort of bang for our buck. And also the messages of prevention and awareness and education. If we have a set of data that highlights very clearly the most prevalent types of cancer, then groups like the Cancer Society, the Brain Tumor Foundation, the Lions Club focusing on prostate cancer, and Tropical Gardens focusing on breast cancer, they'll be able to better target their messages in prevention and awareness as well.
And it's really, we have to give kudos to persons like Mr. Roy Borden, who's, again, a cancer survivor, Miss Lucille, who have come forward. So we start to put a public face to cancer in the Cayman Islands. That helps quite a bit too, doesn't it, Mr. McTaggart?
It just really emphasizes and brings out the human aspect of it. Because a lot of times, people say, you hear about the cancer and stuff, but you never really know. And, kudos to these people who really choose to put a public face to the issue of cancer. It takes courage, and they certainly ought to be commended.
Okay. Well, we'd like to hear some final words from both of you, and we'll start off with Ms. Jennifer, and then you, Mr. McTaggart, after. Okay.
Well, just again, to encourage everybody to check our ministry's website tomorrow, www.ministryofhealth.gov.ky. The draft legislation will be available on that website, as well as a public comment form. But feel free, if you want to just write to us with an email or a letter, not use the comment form, you can do that as well. But just to encourage everybody to take a few minutes to read through the bill, familiarize themselves with us, and let us know if they have any questions or comments or concerns with it, so that we can make sure when it's finalized for Cabinet to approve it to be submitted to the Legislative Assembly, that we've covered what we need to cover with it, and that the public is on board. And just that we look forward to everybody taking the time to send us their feedback, because it is a really important thing. Cabinet really does want to hear from the public on this legislation.
Okay. Mr. McTaggart?
Well, I'd just like to thank the listening public for bearing with us for these past 2 hours. Like to emphasize the fact, particularly, that the confidentiality of the information is going to be collected, OC, and the great efforts that this legislation goes to protect that. I mean, I've read some legislation in my lifetime, but I've not seen such a great effort being made and so many strong provisions in legislation to protect data, as I see in something like this.
And it's simplified also.
Absolutely.
It's not in a whole lot of legalese or medical terminology
short
as well.
To the point, you shall not do it. And if you do it, this is your fine. These are your consequences. So, I mean, I think the public really can take confidence in this, that this really will be it is a cutting piece of legislation, and one that I think the public should embrace and can embrace with confidence.
And if you don't hear anything from the public, that means that they're satisfied. We can assume that means that they're satisfied with what they have seen, in terms of the legislation as well. But we know people, they won't comment, but later on when it comes into effect, then they will be the first to criticize.
That's for sure. Just one other thing. Just want to mention telephone number for Ms. Amanda.
Okay, yes.
That her telephone number is 244-2560, or I can give you the general number for the HSA. It is 949-8600. So if they want to get Amanda, they can call her directly on 244-2560.
Folks, I want to remind you that you have been listening to For the Record. I've been your host, Orrit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning discussing the Cancer Registry Bill that is going out for public consultation and eventually for transmission to the Legislative Assembly for approval, hopefully for approval. I've been discussing those with Mr. Roy McTaggart, who is the MLA representing the district, or one of the MLAs representing the district of Georgetown, and he's also the counselor in the Ministry of Health. Also in the studio with me this morning has been Ms. Jennifer Ahern, who's the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health and Culture. I also want to remind you that For the Record was brought to you by Seagrape Secretarial Services. Seagrape Secretarial Services are located at Unit Number 2, Grand Plaza, Howard Street, Georgetown. Their telephone numbers are 326-9953 and 924-8927. They provide quality, professional, and affordable service, and those services are guaranteed because at Seagrape Secretarial Services there is no job too small for them to undertake. And the morning brew, the morning Joe, was also provided to us by Paradise Coffee. They're located at Mercos Center, and that is where you can get Cayman's only homemade coffee brand. They're roasting beans from all regions of the world on a daily basis. You can enjoy blends like Good Morning Cayman, Cayman Gold, Black Coral, and I guess we can have For the Record Silver. As well. That's a blend that they can have. Paradise Coffee, their number is 9433388, and you can visit them at www.paradisecoffee.ky. I also want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. You can also extend helping hands now by getting involved in the cancer registry that we already have established here in the Cayman Islands, but isn't mandatory, and you can provide information to them in relation to yourself or to family members so that we can compile, we can get quality data that will help people in our health services industry and our policymakers to make better decisions when it comes to our health here in the Cayman Islands. And I ask you to think not about those who want, but about those who need. And we will also leave you with the words of Mr. Bill Withers, Lean on Me. And I ask you to continue to listen to Radio Cayman. You can join Sterling Dwayne Ebanks at 12 o'clock for Talk Today, and For the Record we'll be back on Wednesday morning when we will have the two independent members for the District of Northside and the District of East End on board. I say to you, have a great day, stay safe, God bless.
Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record.